suffering from wounds, burns, bruises, and other injuries. They both deny the allegation. Roger's lawyer declined comment. Allen's lawyer says he plans to vigorously contest the allegations.
Today marks 1 year since Special Counsel Robert Mueller began his investigation into Russian meddling in the presidential election. President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, told Fox News, "It's time to end the probe. The president has been tortured enough." I'm Nora Rahm, NPR News in Washington.
Ardent Theater Company supports WHYY and presents Fun Home, winner of 5 Tony Awards. Fun Home is inspired by Alison Bechdel's best-selling graphic memoir. Moving between past and present, Alison relives her life through a series of memories and conversations, from her coming out to her moving journey to acceptance. Fun Home is a refreshingly honest, moving new musical. Tickets at ardenttheater.org or 215-922-1122.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Philadelphia proudly supports WHYY. CTCA offers clinically qualified cancer patients access to the American Society of Clinical Oncology's TAPER study on the effectiveness of new cancer drugs on specific tumor types. Learn more about Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Philadelphia and the American Society of Clinical Oncology's TAPER study online at cancercenter.com. That's cancercenter.com.
This is Morning Edition. It's WHYY at 6:44. I'm Jennifer Lynn. In order to make generic versions of a drug, pharmaceutical companies release samples to the competition. However, some companies fail to do that, and today the FDA will release a website naming those companies. Could this website change the behavior of drug companies? The Marketplace Morning Report tells us, coming up at 6:51.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from C3 IoT, providing a software platform that enables organizations to deploy artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, and IoT solutions at industrial scale. Learn more at c3iot.ai. From Farmers Insurance, committed to helping people understand the ins and outs of insurance so they can prepare for life's ups and downs. Coverage options and more information can be found at farmers.com. And from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm David Green. There is an important vote taking place today in the Central African nation of Burundi. Citizens there are voting on a referendum that would allow the president to extend his rule through the year 2034. Now, the run-up to this vote has already been marked by violence, and there are fears this controversial referendum could unleash even more. NPR's Ader Peralta has been monitoring the situation from his base in Kenya, and he joins us. Hey, Ader.
Hey, David.
So how's this vote playing out so far?
I mean, so far we know that people have begun voting. We have not heard any reports of major violence, but a colleague in the capital, Bujumbura, tells me that at least one effort from people to vote no has been stopped by police. And as you mentioned, you know, the run-up to this has been incredibly tense. Opponents of the referendum have been beaten, tortured, and even killed. And over the weekend, the government said terrorists crossed the border from Congo and killed 24 people in a small village. The government didn't say if this had anything to do with the referendum, but it gives you an idea of the kind of tension and fear in the country.
Yes, certainly, at the very least, people who are opposed to this president, it sounds like that they're living in fear, potentially. Well, can you remind us of the context here? I mean, who is Burundi's president, and how did we reach this point where he's trying to extend his rule for a very long time?
Yeah, so Pierre Nkurunziza became president in 2005. And he really ushered in peace after what was a really long and bloody civil war. And he came to power under a new constitution, and it was a constitution that called for inclusion and protected the interests of the minority Tutsi population. It was really a victory for the region. But in 2015, Nkurunziza stepped out of the constitution and decided to run for a third term. There was a coup attempt, but it failed, and Nkurunziza survived. And since then, the country has been in a kind of slow burn conflict, but it's serious. More than 450,000 Burundians have fled to neighboring countries.
Wow, and so if that conflict has been simmering, is this the moment when there could be a return to an all-out bloody war?
I mean, that has certainly been the fear. You know, the country has a lot of the same dynamics that Rwanda does. It has the same ethnic groups. And back in 2015, after the coup attempt, there was a real fear that Burundi could become the next Rwanda. But I spoke to Yolande Buka, a researcher at the University of Denver, and she has studied the current situation in Burundi in depth. And she says this is much more complicated than Tribe. Let's listen.
So we're not only talking about Burundi, a potential risk for ethnic tensions. We're talking about Burundi, a country where political actors, regardless of whether they're Hutu or Tutsi, have a lot to lose if they're not in line with the political elite within the CNDD-FDD.
So the CNDD-FDD is the ruling party of Burundi. And Buka says that we should keep in mind that in 2015, the people who attempted a coup against Nkurunziza were fellow Hutus. So yes, there is a chance that this will become very violent and driven by ethnicity, but this referendum also makes it a lot harder for anyone with political ambitions to take over power democratically. And so that leaves the door open to violence.
Well, given all of this, Ader, any idea how this vote is going to go?
No, I think there's very little doubt that this referendum will go through. And the thing to remember is that this is bigger than the extension of a president's rule. In a lot of ways, it begins to erode the compromises that brought peace to Burundi. So if it passes as we think it will, it's going to have a significant effect.
Ader, thanks a lot.
Thank you, David.
This is Morning Edition, 6:49. It's WHYY, an independent assessment of medical care for the inmates at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center in Delaware reveals long wait times to see a doctor and an insufficient record-keeping process. From the Delaware desk, Zoe Reed reports.
The 17-page report says some patients sit in the waiting room for hours before they're seen or may leave without receiving health care at all. One inmate reported a copay was charged to his account for a dentist appointment that he was still waiting for more than 6 weeks later. The report also finds that while the prison staffing model is adequate, it has 23 vacant medical jobs, particularly in nursing. Bureau Chief of Correctional Healthcare, Dr. Mark Richmond, says recruiting is competitive.
We have a brand new hospital being built down in Milford. We have a new psychiatric facility being opened in Georgetown. So we're going to have to make sure that we stay ahead of that and incentivize as much as we can to get our staffing.
The report also found its outdated and slow technology makes record-keeping arduous. Corrections Commissioner Perry Phelps did not offer a specific date to implement all the recommendations, but says he's committed.
We're going to take them, evaluate them, and if the process team looks at the processes we need to do, we're going to move forward with it. I have no other intent other than to fix it.
The Vaughn Correctional Facility was the site of a prison riot in early 2017 that left one guard dead. From the Delaware desk, Zoe Reed, WHYY News.
It's WHYY's Morning Edition at 6:51. And coming up, Michigan State University has agreed to pay $500 million to sexual abuse victims of former sports doctor Larry Nassar.
Money will never make it better, but it's that first acknowledgement that what happened to you was real and could have been prevented on an institutional level.
Coming up, we will have more on that settlement with the president of the university speaking at 7:07. Business news is next. 58 degrees in Philly. Gray skies, chance of rain today in the Philadelphia region.
Applying the Puritan principle of the public shaming to drug prices in America.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Kronos, helping businesses attract, retain, and engage employees through cloud-based human capital management. Kronos.com. Kronos, workforce innovation that works. And by Cloudflare, helping to build a better internet by making more than 6 million websites, apps, and other internet services faster, safer, and more reliable. Cloudflare.com.
I'm David Brancaccio in New York. The Food and Drug Administration today is launching a website that will display a list of pharmaceutical companies. These are the ones the government says have blocked the development of cheaper generic versions by failing to share information and samples with competitors. This public posting is part of FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb's larger crackdown to, as he says, end the shenanigans by brand name drug companies. From our health desk at WHYY in Philadelphia, Marketplace's Dan Gorenstein reports.
When drugs come to market, they're shielded from competition by patents and exclusivity rights before that period ends. Generic companies approach branded drug makers to get samples. Michael Brisca is with the trade group representing generics.
We need about 2,000 to 3,000 doses of the product to conduct the testing to both our own satisfaction and the FDA's.
Some brand name manufacturers refuse to sell samples to competitors, arguing patient safety is at risk, afraid generics won't follow the FDA's safety guidelines. Research conducted by generic manufacturers found this and other tactics restricted competition on 74 drugs with more than $20 billion in sales in 2016.
It should be clear that the FDA is quite serious and won't tolerate these actions going forward.
Washington University's Rachel Sachs is skeptical, however, that outing companies on a website will have much impact. But some more savvy drug companies understand better business practices are needed. I'm Dan Gornstein for Marketplace.
There's news today. The U.S. birth rate has hit a 30-year low. New data today from the Centers for Disease Control find about 4 million babies were born in the U.S. last year. Now, that's down 2% in just 1 year. Marketplace's Erica Barris is following the story.
Demographers say our declining birth rate is because of economic factors. Things like rising housing costs, high student debt, and interruptions in work following childbirth have pushed some women to delay and then forego childbirth. The birth rate declined after the recession and hasn't recovered. Down the line, fewer babies may also mean fewer services for older Americans. We're facing a growing baby boomer population, longer life expectancy, and fewer young workers paying into Social Security, Medicare, and the overall tax base. All this creates a funding imbalance. And there are right now implications on the business side. Earlier this year, Kimberly-Clark, maker of diaper brand Huggies, said it was closing 10 factories and shedding thousands of workers. The reason? A declining birth rate.
All right, Erica, thank you very much. And if you'd like to explore that fiscal meets generational dynamic, book a flight to Germany or Japan, where they're wrestling with this tension of who pays for an aging population if the younger folks aren't breeding much. One answer, some experts point out, can be immigration. Let's do the numbers. The FTSE in London is up 0.2%. Stock index futures down, with the S&P future down 0.2%. Interest rates 3.09% for the 10-year yield. It's down this morning, but still up sharply in a week.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by the Candida Fund, working to advance individual dignity and sustainable communities through investments in transformative leaders and ideas. Learn more at KENDEDAFund.org. And by Magnolia Pictures and Participant Media's RBG, a documentary portrait of the life and career of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, now playing in select theaters.
It's like Apple iOS versus Android, Nikon versus Canon. Which side are you on when this question is asked? What's the big problem solver? Government policy or market forces? We stay in touch with an ongoing scientific survey of millennials that works to be sure that people of color are well represented in the sample. University of Chicago political science professor Kathy Cohen is the founder of this Gen Forward survey. Good morning.
Good morning, David.
Give me a sense. What did you ask? What did you find?
Well, we wanted to know if they thought, given kind of the complex economic issues that the country is facing, if they believed that the free market could handle it all, or if they thought, in fact, we needed a strong government to kind of address these issues. So what we found is that, in fact, across race and ethnicity, young people, millennials, favor a strong government, right? They do not believe, in fact, that the free market alone can handle the economic issues that face the country, and in particular face their generation.
Did you come right out and ask about capitalism? What do you think of capitalism?
Believe it or not, we actually did. We asked questions of favorability, we call them. So how favorable do you feel about capitalism? And then how favorable do you feel about socialism? A majority does not kind of support either capitalism or socialism, but 44% of African Americans feel favorable towards socialism, where only 34% feel favorable towards capitalism. Now, if we look at young whites or white millennials, we see, in fact, the pattern almost switches. 54% of young white millennials feel favorable towards capitalism. So real differences based on race and ethnicity when thinking about capitalism and socialism.
Some of this is defined by recent history. The millennials joined the workforce at around the time that the economy was falling through the floor in the Great Recession.
That's right. I mean, but I would even go back further. While we will focus often on the kind of Great Recession, I think the changing structure of the economy, the impact in particular on communities of color, and the lessening of opportunities quite often for those who are most vulnerable have an impact on how these young people think about the economy, but think about kind of systems in the economy, whether they are capitalism or socialism or the free market and the strong government. So we'd have to kind of take a broad view, I think, when really trying to understand how millennials think about the economy.
The ongoing scientific survey is called Gen Forward. Kathy Cohen is a political science professor at the University of Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you.
And today, Microsoft is set to unveil a video game input device designed for people with disabilities. It's called the Xbox Adaptive Controller and has some DVD disc-sized programmable controllers and 19 jacks on the back to accept a variety of triggers and joystick inputs. A nonprofit called Able Gamers estimates there are more than 30 million people with disabilities who play video games. Some disability advocates wonder what's taken a company so long to do this. This thing from Microsoft will be available for $100 later this year. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
WHYY monitors traffic and transit for major delays, supported by Giant.
This is WHYY FM Philadelphia, WNJN FM 89.7 Atlantic City, WNJZ 90.3 Cape May Courthouse, WNJB FM 89.3 Bridgeton, WNJM 89.9 Manahawkin, and WNJS FM 88.1 Berlin.
Heavy clouds this morning in Philadelphia. It could rain really at any time today, according to the forecast. Good morning, I'm Jennifer Lynn. This is Morning Edition. It's WHYY 90.9 in Philly. 6:59, and the flood advisory in effect for our area, I think that's over, but I'm going to double check that for you, and we'll get back to you. Periods of rain today, as I mentioned, a high of 68. Tonight, cloudy with rain developing after midnight, a low of 61. Some rain again tomorrow, up to 63, and Saturday, some rain, a high of 70. A good morning to you. It is Morning Edition at 7 o'clock.
Good morning. Michigan State University has agreed to pay $500 million to settle litigation filed by more than 300 women who said they were sexually abused by former sports doctor Larry Nassar. It's Morning Edition from NPR News.
In Philadelphia, Mayor Kenney announces the first rec center that will be renovated under his ambitious $500 million rebuild program. I'm Jennifer Lynn. We'll bring you that story and others coming up.
In this hour, we will hear from the president of Michigan State University. I'm David Green.
And I'm Rachel Martin. The president of the European Council slammed the Trump administration over Iran, saying, quote, with friends like that, who needs enemies? We'll ask the German ambassador to the U.S. about Europe's next move to keep the deal in place. And NPR's Christopher Joyce explains how many of the ocean's fish are trying to outsmart climate change. It is Thursday, May 17th. Sugar Ray Leonard celebrates a birthday today. The boxing champ turned 62 years old. The news is coming up next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Today is the first anniversary of Robert Mueller's appointment as special counsel. He's leading the investigation into possible ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. President Trump and his supporters have repeatedly denied any links with Russia. Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, told Fox News' Laura Ingraham that Mueller may still press for an interview with the president.
It's been a year. He's gotten 1.4 million documents. He's interviewed 28 witnesses, and he has nothing, which is why he wants to bring the president to an interview. And we're demanding from him, tell us what you have to get from an interview that you don't already have, because he has all the facts to make a decision.
Mueller has gotten 5 guilty pleas in his investigation, including from Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates. Negotiators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico have yet to reach an agreement on the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. That's despite today's deadline set by Congress. James Frederick reports from Mexico City. Negotiators in Mexico are still hopeful.
Mexican Economy Minister Ildefonso Guajardo told a Mexican radio station that although there are still major issues to work out, he thinks it would be possible to reach a new NAFTA deal by the end of May or early June, as long as the U.S. and Canada stay on board.
Although he didn't elaborate on what those major issues are, wages and rules for the auto industry have been sticking points in recent talks. Mexican officials are eager to finish the deal as soon as possible, since elections for a new president, as well as hundreds of legislators, happen on July 1st. For NPR News, I'm James Frederick in Mexico City.
Iraqis are still waiting for final results of parliamentary elections held last Saturday. As NPR's Jane Araf reports from Baghdad, these have been delayed by fraud allegations in some places.
The results were supposed to have been released by Monday, and then the winning parties could start negotiations over forming a government. Instead, the Election Commission says it's missing votes from 186 polling stations. Most of them were from Kirkuk, where Arab and Turkmen leaders have accused Kurdish parties of fraud. In fact, the election chief said his workers there were being surrounded by gunmen and held hostage. That turned out not to be true, but it's a sign that after elections which took place peacefully, tensions in some places are dangerously high amid the vote counting. Jane Araf, NPR News, Baghdad.
The World Health Organization says a new case of Ebola virus has been discovered in a major city in Democratic Republic of Congo. WHO officials are concerned that now the deadly illness has appeared in a heavily populated area, it may spread quickly. The World Health Organization says 44 suspected and confirmed cases of Ebola have been reported in DRC in the past 5 weeks. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from Visiting Angels, professional caregivers assisting adults in bathing, dressing, meals, and light housework nationwide. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Office locations are at visitingangels.com. And the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Good morning, 59 degrees in Philly. We're going up to 69 today at 7:04. I'm Jennifer Lynn, WHYY News. The U.S. Justice Department is launching an investigation into allegations of sexual abuse in New Jersey's only women's prison. From the New Jersey desk, WHYY's Joe Hernandez reports.
8 employees at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility already face criminal charges. One was convicted last week of sexual assault and official misconduct. That's just a snapshot of a growing criminal inquiry dating back years at New Jersey's only prison for women. Now, the feds are stepping in with the announcement that the Justice Department will interview staff and inmates as well as review documents in a wide-ranging investigation of the facility. Governor Phil Murphy named a new head of the Department of Corrections this month after the former commissioner, who'd been in charge for 8 years, retired. The DOC says it is cooperating with the federal investigation. From the New Jersey desk, Joe Hernandez, WHYY News.
Following a student protest at Swarthmore College's handling of sexual assault claims, the dean of students at the college is exiting. The Philadelphia Inquirer reports H. Elizabeth Braun is resigning and says she'll be launching her own higher education consulting firm. Braun, in an email, made no mention of recent protests by Organizing for Survivors, a campus-based group that advocates for the victims of sexual assault. Students from the group staged a sit-in in Braun's office earlier this month over what they called the mishandling of sexual assault investigations. The group called for Braun to resign and for a review of the college's investigation procedures. Philadelphia Mayor Kenney announced the first recreation center that will be renovated under his ambitious $500 million rebuild program.
Miles and her husband were expecting the baby girl this month. Miles was injured and hospitalized at the time of the crash. Her 4-year-old daughter, Abigail, along with a 1-year-old, Joshua Liu, were killed. 44-year-old driver Dorothy Bruns was charged with manslaughter earlier this month. She reportedly suffered a seizure at the time of the crash. Bruns has pleaded not guilty. Patchy fog and rain this morning. Highs today expected around 68 degrees. It's 57 degrees now in New York at 7:07.
Support for NPR comes from Visiting Angels, professional caregivers assisting adults in bathing, dressing, meals, and light housework nationwide. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Office locations are at visitingangels.com.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jessica Parker, longtime New Yorker, and not only am I a longtime member of WNYC, I am devoted, reliant upon, and deeply in love with this station. It's a sort of vital part of my day, even if all I have are brief windows. No matter the time spent listening, I'm always learning, being challenged, amused, educated, irritated, delighted, and grateful by for what I'm hearing. If you love this station as much or more, and I suspect you are many, or if you say in conversation at least once in your day, I heard on WNYC, I hope very much you will consider a pledge. Here's how.
Call us up at 1-888-376-9692 or go online at WNYC.org. And I'm sure you do the same thing that Sarah Jessica Parker does. How many times have you said to a friend, I was listening to WNYC and I heard this. I was listening to Brian Lehrer and I heard this. Well, if you do, you probably listen enough to contribute, to join our community here at WNYC, support public radio, as other news organizations are cutting back funding in providing news coverage. WNYC is actually growing. We're increasing what you hear on WNYC. Our reporters are winning more and more awards. There are fewer and fewer desks in the newsroom because we have so many people here. Support WNYC, and we'll continue doing that. We want to get larger and bigger. We want to continue providing all this great programming that you can't get anywhere else on your radio dial or on your computer or on your smartphone. 1-888-376-9692 is the telephone number. The web address is WNYC.org. I'm Richard Hake here with WNYC's Program Director, Jacqueline Sincata.
And good morning, and thank you very much to everybody who's made a contribution so far as we begin this spring fundraiser. We really appreciate your contribution, and we appreciate that you have trust in us, that we will use your dollars well. 888-376-9692 is our telephone number. You can also make a pledge online at WNYC.org. How about a pledge of $10 a month? If for that $10 a month, you will hear your dollars at work every day, producing politics from around the world on the BBC and The Takeaway, hearing local and national political coverage, and having a place to discuss the issues on The Brian Lehrer Show. And of course, on midday, you'll hear great conversations on new books, music, movies, the culture of the city. Those are just a few of the things you get on WNYC, just a few of the things that your contribution helps to pay for. 888-376-9692. Consider that for a moment, and then please do go to the phones. It'll take just a few minutes of your time. 888-376-9692, or make your pledge on our secure e-pledge form at WNYC.org.
Take a moment to marvel at the incredible diversity of trees in your neighborhood. One of the most prevalent is the London plane tree. It's the one with the camouflage-looking bark. Trees are essential to our city. They clean our air, provide us shade on those hot summer days, and add beauty to the urban landscape. When there's a drought, you can help them. That's right. Just fill a bucket or get a hose and give them a nice long drink. You can think of WNYC like the Great London Plane Tree. We know you appreciate all we provide, and a few times a year, we ask you for something to sustain us, so we can continue to be there for you. But we need you to take action to help keep us healthy. Donate now, and you'll receive a copy of New York City Trees, a field guide to the metropolitan area. It's our gift to you, and it's your way to support WNYC and learn more about the jungle part of our urban jungle. Please become a member now, and thanks.
To become a member of WNYC and to pick up this great guide, the New York City Trees, a field guide, call us up at 1-888-376-9692 and pledge $5 a month. That's a $60 contribution to WNYC. I'm kind of obsessed with trees here in New York, and this guide does tell the stories.
We're finding out so much about this, Richard.
The guide has great pictures. I like to watch, at this time of year when the leaves, when different species of trees and how quickly the leaves kind of appear. Do you have a favorite tree, Jen?
I do. The Eastern Redbud is actually one of my favorites. It's so unusual because the budding happens really, really close to the bark. It doesn't really lay off of it. And it's beautiful. It's this deep, kind of purpley, pinky color. Just love it. I'm looking for it in the book.
I know you got the book there. I do. I like the Japanese maple just because that was the tree in my front yard when I was growing up. There's actually one in front of my apartment building here in Manhattan right now.
And we can both find out more about our favorite trees when we get the New York City Field Guide to Trees for our pledge of $5 a month.
And as a bonus for today, we're also sending in a seed packet, a WNYC Wildflower seed packet along with the tree guide. So that's yours for $5 a month. $60, we can offer all that, but what we're offering really is all the great programming that you get on WNYC. Support us right now. We'll thank you with the tree guide. We'll thank you with Morning Edition every single morning. 1-888-3
888-376-9692 or WNYC.org. And thank you so much.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm David Green in Culver City, California.
And I'm Rachel Martin in Washington, D.C. 332 women. It's hard to wrap your head around that number. Think about a huge auditorium. Think about that auditorium filled to capacity. 332. That's the number of